All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to another Mindful Chat. This is a series of videos for students to just get an idea of resources that are available to them, ways that they can take care of themselves during this pandemic, and just, I think, grounding. We're really just trying to help people settle, feel like they can get in touch with some of the things that are helpful for them in terms of mental health, physical health, and connection. Because I think a lot has shifted. So today we'll be talking a lot more about physical activity. And I guess I've been saying guest. I don't know what to call it. The person I'm talking to today is Amy Bidwell. And Amy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Amy Bidwell. I'm a professor in the Department of Health Promotion and Wellness.
Great, thanks. And our conversation will go, I think, in a little bit of different directions, depending on where we cover. And I think there's a lot of overlap between physical health and mental health. And that's some of the stuff that I want to bridge, at least through this conversation. But I know I've introduced myself in previous videos. My name is Kyle Dzintars. I'm a counselor at the Counseling Center, and I do outreach coordination there. So I've just been doing this as a way to connect with students in a different way since we're all virtual right now. So in terms of physical activity, I know a lot of students have reported just a shift in that. You can't go to the gym. For some of them, that's been difficult. And then depending on where you live right now, it's hard to maybe even just go take a walk. Have you noticed any shifts or changes on your end?
Yes, definitely. I mean, not having the gym is really, really big for a lot of our students, especially our student athletes that are so used to constantly being busy. And the fact that it's been miserable out, I feel like all the time, it's really hard to get yourself up and going, and you don't have as much structure in your schedule. So it's really difficult. I know my students are really struggling with not being able to exercise, or at least thinking that they can't exercise because the gym is closed. I almost feel like maybe sometimes people use that as an excuse. I know I did for the first week, and then I realized how mentally unstable I felt afterwards, because I really need that energy and that exercise every day.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's true. I said to coworkers the other day, because I was like, oh, it snowed. Isn't it almost May? Like, aren't we almost in May? Like, go away.
It was like a time warp.
Definitely. So yeah, I think there are those kind of barriers to people just kind of getting outside right now too. And obviously with weather changes, you can't predict it. It goes up and down, especially in Oswego, New York. But yeah, I think I've noticed the same though. I was going for walks on nice days, and even if it was just around the block, to get outside, take a short walk and come back, just get away from the computer for a little bit. I felt really good, but the moment, weather gets bad and you don't do that, I feel the effects very quickly. I think that's a really important part of just taking care of ourselves and feeling like okay.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting what you said, Kyle, about how just when you're sitting at the computer, just getting up, you felt like you wanted to get up and move. That's, I think, the really big message, is that we keep hearing that because we're kind of self-contained in quarantine, that we have to exercise. And people immediately associate exercise with, oh, I have to get up at 6 a.m. and run on a treadmill, or, do squats or something. But really, just getting up every hour from your computer, stepping away from your computer for 5 or 10 minutes and just moving. I know my watch goes off every 50 minutes to tell me to get up and move, and sometimes I ignore it. But oftentimes I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I just need to spend 5 more minutes getting this email out or something. And then, you notice you have all these spelling errors, or you can't even figure out what you want to put in the email. Whereas if I actually, as soon as that alarm went off, got up, walked around for 5-10 minutes, came back, it's amazing how much more efficient your brain works. And, there's so much research out there about physical activity and cognition and mental health, and attention. And so, I know there's a lot of studies out there in grade schools looking at, condensing the school day, like the learning hours, but increasing how active you are throughout the day. And this time when we're home and we're kind of stuck in this kind of rut, if you just every 45, 50 minutes get up and move for about 5 or 10 minutes, you're going to, the hormones that are stimulated and released is going to affect your attention as effectively as if you did a long continuous bout. So, next time you're hearing your parents or somebody bring the groceries in the house, run upstairs or run out the door and help them. Something as simple as that,
Mhm.
it really makes a difference.
Definitely. Yeah. I've been hearing a lot more about that too, because I think especially for students who are trying to keep up with schoolwork and, they're struggling with the change in like environment and finding their space and all that stuff is going on top of this. They get into this rut of, well, I have to push myself to focus harder, or I have to like work longer to make sure stuff is getting done. But everything that I've been reading has been, all right, that can be secondary if you're taking care of yourself in terms of like movement, diet, like just those things that we can have some say in, because once that stuff is like in place, the other stuff happens much smoother. And like you said, a little bit more efficiently. We have a clearer mind to approach that stuff. It doesn't feel like we're forcing ourselves so much to do it, which is just, debilitating after a while.
Yeah, from a mental health perspective, you may already be kind of down and out because you're stuck at home or you have a lot of work to do. And then to compound that with thinking, oh, well, geez, I'm supposed to exercise. If you look at it in that negative aspect, it can become a burden. But if you look at it more positively, like, oh, if I just move a little more today, this is actually going to have a greater effect on my mental capacity to do work, more so than if I just sit here and pound out this paper. And, this is really no different than what I tell my students when we're face to face is, instead of trying to, stay an extra hour up that night or get up earlier, just put it down, let it go, and get out and go for a quick walk, 5 minutes of a walk, or, run up and down the stairs for a couple minutes, and then come back and sit down. You're going to find you're going to spend half the time on your work because your brain's going to be working so much faster. There's a ton of research to support that a long kind of exercise session is the same as if you're doing these multiple mini bouts. It's almost like what they call it is like snack exercising. And so you're kind of like snacking on physical activity all day. And the benefit of that is it's constantly stimulating those happy hormones throughout the day. And from a attention discussion concept is those, every time you're moving, your neurons are firing in your brain more efficiently. So now it's going to essentially get your body moving, your brain moving more efficiently throughout the day.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to think about it. I'll tie. So we just did a social media push for the Pomodoro Technique for studying, which is taking those, a good chunk of time to work on stuff, but then having a small break. And I just imagine like what it would be like instead of it being to lounge somewhere else or just to go back onto your phone as a break, but even just to take a small walk or do some jumping jacks, learn a TikTok dance. I don't know, something like that.
I'm trying to TikTok dance with my daughter. Those are not easy.
No, they're not.
But yeah, it's funny because I love that Pomodoro technique, and I do it sometimes. And it's funny because you're right. When I stop to have my break, usually my break is just switching to a different window on my computer. You're not really getting a break. For me here, in my office at home, luckily it's down in the basement. And so I don't have a bathroom down here. So I do have to go upstairs periodically, but you just want to avoid just sitting there. And one thing, I was listening to some things that my students were telling me. They were saying that they're finally starting to get into the groove of exercise again, which is great. But what a lot of them were saying was they would start their day with a nice workout, and then of course they're sitting all day. And I know I've fallen into this a ton. We call it the active couch potato. And it's that person that had a really good workout, maybe a good hour solid hard workout in the morning, but then sat all day. But from a mental perspective, anxiety, attention, it really defeats kind of the whole purpose. And there's research to support the fact that for every hour that you sit, you negate 15 minutes of your workout. And so sitting for 4 hours, which is easy to do, you've negated that whole hour of physical activity. Yep. So it just shows the importance of getting it up and moving, and the benefits, not from weight loss, that's a completely different discussion, but from mental capacity and cardiovascular health, it's just as effective to get these multiple kind of snack type exercises in.
Yep. Yeah, I like that. I almost see it as like rewriting the narrative around the idea of physical activity, because to touch back on what you said before, like the idea of exercise being like one really big burst of like energy release is very different than this like, okay, over time throughout the day, there are these times where we have the opportunity to do that in smaller doses. Like it doesn't have to be these like grand workouts or some huge scale of what that is. It can be like minimal movement. It's just the idea of like moving around, being active in that way.
Yeah, and I think, we get so caught up in the fact that we feel like we need to get our heart rate up and we need to sweat and we need to make sure our headphones are working and we need to have the perfect outfit to go work, But in reality, it's interesting if you can just get up and move and focus on what you're doing. So kind of getting back to the mindfulness. I had an experience yesterday, which was really interesting. I went for my morning run and my headphones broke like a third of the way in. And I was like, I'm going to go back. I can't do this. And I'm like, okay, this is just ridiculous. Like, you can't stop if your headphones die. And so I kept trekking along, and I had in my head I was going to do 3 miles. I ended up a while later getting home. I had done 5 miles, and it was the fastest 5 miles I'd ever run. And I was like, that was amazing, because it was like I heard the cars passing by, I heard my footsteps, and then I found what I was actually doing was I think I started to meditate on the sound of my breath. And so now I'm like, I'm done. I mean, it was so mentally like amazing, because I was like, it was so mindful. I was so caught up in the moment. And I will say, I ended up like being exhausted all day because I ran too much. So that was a downfall. But like at the moment, like next time you go out for a walk, leave the phone at home. I mean, how cool would that be just to leave it at home? Or if you're doing that TikTok dance, just let yourself go. Just enjoy the moment instead of it being more of like a chore. Just embrace that moment, that 5 minutes that you're spending with either yourself or a friend or whatever.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, I love the tie-in with mindfulness. I think a lot of like what we, as counselors anyway, the conversations we have are like, how do you disconnect from technology? How do you practice those mindfulness experiences to just really be in the moment? Because it's very easy to get consumed with what the future is, or get caught on like a final product, or like all this stuff that takes us away from what we're going through. I love that idea of using activity, especially as a mindfulness exercise, because it is like you have to be there for it. And I love also the idea that I call them like these self-imposed rules, like with your headphones, right? Like, oh, my headphones died. Well, I can't run without music, so I am done. I used to do the same thing. I used to do the same thing.
I got to the gym before and turned around because I forgot my watch or something. I'm like, I'm out. It's a sign.
Yep. Yes. It's so true, though. I think we all do that to some capacity, whether it's to make an excuse or whether it feels like we can't achieve the same thing we had in mind. It's that like breaking of expectation. And I think for some people that disappointment is like enough to be like, oh, well. But I think that's cool that you were able to kind of get through that and catch yourself and say like, no, I can still do it. And we're able to experience it.
If I wasn't such a determined person, plus I knew that if I was going to go back home, I would just sit in front of the computer.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's not like I'm rushing home for anything.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've had so many conversations with people over the past few weeks, and sometimes it would come up like, oh, I just, went for a run or something, and everyone's always like, gosh, how do you find time for that or something like that? And sometimes that frustrates me because it doesn't have to be going out for a 5-mile run or a 3-mile run. That's what I enjoy, which I never enjoyed running when I was in my 20s at all. But it's what I enjoy now. That's not what you need to do. It's what you want to do. So if it is spending 5 minutes doing a TikTok video, or I was reading some reflection papers for students, and they were talking about things they were doing, and they would download apps on the TV, on YouTube and things like that, and do, a 10-minute, yoga video or something, and I know I see my daughter every now and again, she'll be walking around the house and all of a sudden she'll just start doing like push-ups or something. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, I don't know if you've seen it. You have to exercise your name, like for each letter.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
she'll do it throughout the day. And I
Oh,
think,
cool.
so she's like, I'm doing the A right now. And I'm like, okay. But again, you don't have to do it all at once. You know, you don't have to spend that chunk of time. You know,
Yep.
when you have 15 minutes between appointments or between classes or whatever you're doing, run up and down the stairs.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a set plan thing where you have to have the headphones working and the correct outfit. And I know me, if I'm out and I even feel a raindrop, I'm like, okay.
Yep. Definitely. Yeah, no, I like that a lot. I honestly have been steering a lot of students in general to TikTok dances because I think there's just a lot of them are scrolling on it all the time anyway. So why not just learn one of them? Spend a little bit of time just like getting some movement in that way and have some fun. Like whether or not you record it, you know, it's just like learning it to say like, oh, I did that. I can do it.
I know. I was always against the TikTok with my daughter, and because I was like, no. But then I realized I'm watching her and she's setting it up and she's doing all, and I'm like, she's moving. What's wrong with this?
I know.
And so I have fully embraced it. One of these days, maybe I'll record my own TikTok video, but I think that's going to be a ways off.
Yeah, you and me both. I'm not at that stage yet. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's a great idea. I think for people who are just stuck and they say, okay, I can't go for a long run. Maybe I can't get out of my house because of where I live. But just looking for those times where you can introduce a little bit of small movement, like push-ups and sit-ups, that stuff can happen easily in small spaces. And even to just stand up and walk in some circles, do some jumping jacks.
Just take your laptop and get it off your lap and set it up on a counter. At least you're moving. You know, something even, you know, and this is a little bit harder to relate now, but normally like parking further away at the grocery store, you know, I've always been that person that says, you know, instead of emailing the person in the office next to you, get up and move. And so, you know, I truly believe everybody should have an activity monitor on their wrist because it does cue you to get up about every hour. And then it also tells you kind of how much movement you have. And the nice thing about it is it doesn't gauge the movement on necessarily intense exercise. So just walking your dog gives you those movement hours. And so, you know, it's really just, you know, one thing that I tell people is like physical activity just has to be a part of your normal day. Exercise is a little bit more difficult to hone in on because it's more structured. But physical activity should just be like as simple as brushing your teeth. It just should be something that you do. You just know that when you get up, you're going to go for a 5-minute walk around the block. Or right before you eat your lunch, you're going to do your TikTok dance. You know, it's part of your day. You're parking further away. You're taking the stairs. It's just that kind of movement that just sneaks up on you at all time. And, you know, and one thing I really wanted to address is, you know, we focus so much on this pandemic and treatments, but from a health kind of education perspective, there's the prevention side of it. And there is a ton of research to support exercise, increasing your anti-inflammatory markers. Okay. So, you know, all these markers in our blood that we need to fight these diseases and these viruses are upregulated with exercise. And it doesn't have to be your 60 minutes of pounding it out on the treadmill. The research shows that a minimum of 5 minutes sporadically throughout the day is just as beneficial, and if not more beneficial, because if you do your really hard workout, say in the morning, usually within an hour or two, those benefits have dropped. And so from a anti-inflammatory or a kind of a antioxidant perspective, the more often you can do it, the more chances you can spike those antioxidants. And so, you know, someone had asked me, I don't know, last week or something, you know, why is it that so many people are getting so sick with COVID, but so many people don't, like so many people don't even realize it. that they even have it. And, you know, I really do believe it could be related to how active they are, how well they eat, how well they manage their stress and anxiety, and all those increase the kind of bad inflammatory markers in your body that make you more susceptible for viruses and everything else. So exercise kind of counteracts that. So it'll be interesting to see the long-term research that comes out with this.
Yeah. I've been really interested in that too, and I know we're like a ways from that, but it is interesting to see like what might be contributing to that during this time. I think we're going to have a lot of research that comes out of this, but yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I always try and think of, especially with mental health, I think it's somewhat intuitive. Like we do feel better when we move. I think some people think of it as like, all right, I took a walk today and it was being outside, and that can be really helpful. But the movement piece really is it's so linked with how we feel and how grounded we are and how, relaxed our body can become. Because I think that's such a marker of how we're doing in some ways. So I think people do get stuck.
Especially, you know, moving outside. And I think I had addressed this maybe in my blog or something, but the endorphins and the hormones that are released by the smell of fresh air. And again, it's disheartening because it seems to be raining all the time and all that. But I know the last few days I've been sitting outside eating my lunch. Of course, I'm pretty much in a snowsuit because I'm so cold, but I'm outside and I'm smelling the fresh air and the sun is out briefly. And so I think, you know, when you are trying to get these little mini bouts of exercise, ideally if you can do it outside, because it does mentally release those hormones, those happy hormones, just to smell the outdoors and to see the outdoors. And I know we have this family, this a duck that has taken ownership of my front area that I need to really landscape, but I'm not allowed to because the duck keeps barking at me. So it's this duck that's sitting on its 10 eggs. And so I go out and I have lunch with it every day.
Oh,
and I'm
cool.
telling you, it kind of acted like a stupid thing, but I kind of look forward to seeing my duck because I'm outside and I'm away from technology and I'm away from everything. And I'm looking at the simple duck eating my plant. And I'm like, oh, it's got to go to the grocery store and get different food.
Right. It's so true though. I've found that even just going outside with my dog, I go at his pace. I mean, he will walk around, he'll stop, whatever. I found that going at that pace away from screens is probably the most relaxing moments that I have right now. And again, that's like a little bit of movement. It's not exerting a ton of energy, but it's nice to be out in the like natural world. And he doesn't care about technology, so.
It's so true. And, you know, I remember when I first got a dog, I was reading about dogs. We have 2 dogs, and someone said, when you go for a walk with your dog, it's about your dog. It's not about you. So when that dog wants to stop to sniff everything, you stop and sniff it with, you know, not literally, but you stop and relax. So, you know, when you go out for your walk with your dog, really just leave the technology at home and, you know, really embrace the fact that the dog doesn't give a darn. You should just go with the flow and, you know, just stay 6 feet apart.
Definitely. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think that's great. So, I mean, hopefully there were some ideas in here for people that like do feel somewhat stuck. Like, don't put so much pressure on you to overexert or to do these like massive workouts during this time. Because I think we're all adjusting and adapting, and just having like those I like the idea of snacking, like the snack breaks of movement. I think that's a really nice way to understand this and maybe put it into practice. Like, to just give it a try and see where you can find those spaces. Because I guarantee they're there. We just haven't thought of them in that way.
Oh, definitely. It's just, you know, take 5 minutes off of, you know, searching through, you know, social media or something. But you would be surprised if you try it just for a week or so with this snacking of exercise. You're going to I think you're going to feel amazing.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. And the ideas were great. I mean, I hope that people did take that away and can start to practice it. So, I mean, if you want to leave comments on how you're doing that, that would be great. We could start a conversation around it. And then, Amy, is there anything that you'd like to direct people to, if there's resources or anything?
You know, for one, exercise is medicine. I purposely wore my exercise is medicine shirt, and this is really for my own mental sanity. People, my students, everybody know if I haven't exercised because I just am in a different mental state. So exercise is definitely medicine. I think, you know, as far as resources and take home messages, honestly, keep it simple. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. It could be something as simple as throwing on your sneakers and going outside. And that's really, you know, there's so much out there, so many resources as far as, you know, what to do is, you know, push-ups, whatever it is. It's more, you know, taking a step back and thinking, let's just keep it simple. How can I really, truly do this in the day that I have? When I have 3 kids at home and, you know, this little snacking of exercise is a way to get it in, help you mentally feel better without the stress of just one more thing that you have to do.
Yeah. Yep. And I think I like the idea of just reframing those moments of something that might seem tedious, like having to go all the way across the house or whatever,
Right.
but that becomes positive because you're like, well, I'm doing something really good for myself in doing this. Like, that's okay.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here and
Thank you,
chatting.
Kyle. I appreciate it.
All right. And I'll sign off with everybody. So I will see you in the next chat. Take care.